Remember the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the $2,000 a month nearly 9 million Canadians have relied on in this pandemic? Well, that's over. And this bill proposes a replacement. Last week, most people receiving CERB were transferred to employment insurance. Currently, they get $400 a week, about that, depending on a number of factors. This bill, though, will raise that amount to $500 as part of a deal reached with the NDP. The bill will also set up 3 new benefits for those who don't qualify for EI but still need support. First, there's the Canada Recovery Benefit for self-employed gig or contract workers, also set at $500 a week. Then there's the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit for Canadians who don't have paid sick leave through their employer and need to stay home and self-isolate. This will provide $500 a week for up to 2 weeks. Finally, there's the caregiving benefit for those who need to stay home and take care of a loved one, like a child. This would be available for 1 adult per household and offer $500 a week for up to 26 weeks. The Liberals' fast-track debate on the bill this afternoon. Now the opposition is accusing them of rushing it through Parliament to avoid scrutiny, while the government insists people's livelihoods are at stake. Joining me now to debate all of this, Mark Holland is the Chief Government Whip, Blake Richards is the Conservative Whip, and Peter Julian is the leader, the NDP's House Leader, I should say. Welcome to all 3 of you. Thanks for making time for us. I believe you're all in Ottawa this evening.
We are, yeah.
Okay.
It's very good to be with you.
Mr. Holland, I'm going to start with you. In announcing that the bill would face a confidence vote, the government's House Leader tweeted, "Canadians can't wait. We need to move forward together." Is that disingenuous to say, considering it's only because your party prorogued Parliament that you're up against such a time crunch right now?
No, I mean, obviously the prorogation was important. We had a period of time where we were dealing with the pandemic. We needed an opportunity to set the agenda and talk about how we're going to be dealing with not only the rest of the pandemic and the recovery, but in what's going to happen thereafter. And we need to get these services out there. This prorogation occurred towards the end of August. We had an opportunity over that period of time to hear from Canadians in terms of what was working and what wasn't. What improvements needed to be made to prepare for, unfortunately, what we're dealing with here, which is the second wave. Canadians have been incredible in supporting one another. It's essential that the government be there to support them as well as we move through this difficult time.
Respectfully, Mr. Holland, you knew at the end of August when Parliament was being prorogued, when your government made that decision, that CERB was going to run out. You knew this timeline existed, but you still decided not to introduce this legislation until the end of September.
Well, I think that there's a whole suite of things that we both have been doing in real time as we've been dealing with the pandemic, and now additional measures as we're moving into a later and longer phase of this pandemic, where it's part of really a comprehensive approach to how we're trying to support Canadians. So putting the legislation here, I think the measures that are being introduced are very direct and clear in terms of the support they're going to be giving to caregivers, the support that they're going to be given to those who are self-employed, those who have lost their job as a result of the pandemic. And everything is moving quickly in this period of time, and government is having to respond at a speed that it's never operated before to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. And that's our priority here, to make sure that the programs and services that we have meet the needs of Canadians. And we've had to be doing that, and very much in real time without really any pause, dealing with one of the largest issues that this or any generation has faced in a long, long time, certainly going back to some of the great crises that this country has faced. So, I think it's important to move quickly, but also try to have consultation. It's a difficult balance. It's a difficult thing to navigate, but our priority is squarely fixed on making sure Canadians have what they need.
Mr. Richards, I know that your party has criticized the prorogation and the timing of all this and the lack of debate that will result. But that said, putting that aside, will your party vote against this bill? I mean, the substance of it is all about delivering help to people who are no longer able, for example, to qualify for CERB, but who might need it.
Well, first of all, let me say that, these excuses about, we had to prorogue, they knew when these benefits were going to be running out. So they could have planned properly to ensure that there was actually time to properly study this legislation. There's been lots of faults in some of their previous responses, and fixes have had to be made later on down the road. And if they were actually preparing it ahead of time, like they knew that when this was going to end, we could have done that to make sure that this is in its proper format. Now, as far as the bill itself, We've made a request to see the bill split. We certainly think that it's wrong for the government to expect to have all these unlimited spending powers that they're asking for, but we also know that Canadians need these benefits. And so as much as we regret the fact that they're not giving proper time to study this like they should be, we want to make sure Canadians have those opportunities to have those benefits. So what we're doing now is we're seeking to see that bill split so that there can be separate votes on that. And we'll of course hope for a positive result on that so that we're able to vote accordingly.
Let me follow up with you quickly before moving on to Mr. Julian. Is it really unlimited spending power that they're seeking? My understanding from how it was described is it's an extension of the spending power that they were able to use throughout the pandemic, and basically initially to get those supports out, and the extensions that they've promised, for example, for some of them or these new ones would require increased spending power in that capacity, and that's what that's what the bill does. Does it really give them carte blanche? That's not my understanding.
Well, I mean, what we're talking about here is a government that has made a lot of mistakes along the way here, and there's been a lot of things that have had to be fixed. And you can imagine why we and many Canadians don't trust them completely here. And so we have to ensure that, well, we want to make sure people are getting benefits. We have to ensure that there's some check on the spending. And so I think to be able to look at this bill from those perspectives, the benefits themselves that need to be extended, those are important for Canadians, and we get that. But some of the other measures, there should be some more study of. There needs to be a longer look at some of those things, and so that's what we're seeking to try to do here.
Mr. Julian, your party, along with the Conservatives, was very critical of the Liberals when they decided to prorogue Parliament. But it's essentially because of your support, your party's support of this bill, that the government feels comfortable, I think it's fair to say, in expediting and fast-tracking debate over the bill and basically limiting debate in the end and putting it to a confidence vote. Do you regret your actions in kind of limiting the debate that this bill will now have?
And no, not at all, because as of midnight on Sunday night, over 1 million Canadian families no longer had the wherewithal even to put food on the table. So the government's actions have been completely irresponsible. There's simply no justification for shutting down Parliament as they did and not having this debate a month ago so that people had some measure of security about what was happening after the emergency response benefit. But that we things into place. 1 million families are waiting, and at this point are living with complete uncertainty. And so what we want to do is get this legislation through so that they get the supports that they need. And I hope all Canadians judge the Liberals on what they've done over the last 6 weeks. That was, I think, completely irresponsible to shut down Parliament just because of some of the emerging scandals that we've all seen. They should have been discussing this with the opposition well before.
Yeah, but with respect, I mean, you're saying that on the one hand, yet you provided support not only for the bill, and granted they did, add two things to it, to your request, to the party's request, and by extension, you're also going to support the throne speech. So really, if they did such a thing as you describe it, they've gotten away with it because of your party's support.
No, we made sure that people have gotten the supports that they need, including millions of Canadians finally having access to sick leave in the time of a pandemic. This is vitally important. So what we've done is taken care of Canadians, but the Liberal Party deserves, I believe, to be sanctioned for its actions over the last few weeks. What we want to do is not have Canadians suffer the consequences of Liberals' irresponsibility.
Mr. Holland, your colleague, Mr. Richards, there talked about the suggestion to split the bill into two so that one could be focused solely on the benefits that all of you, I think, agree Canadians need, and the other one can then get some more scrutiny because it does concern spending powers for your government. Are you amenable to that?
Look, I think I just have to take one step back, and then I'll come to your question. Prorogation is an important step to be able to after 5.5 years when we suddenly hit a pandemic, to be able to take a look at exactly where the country is, take a breath, and be able to introduce a response. I mean, there was a period of time when we're dealing with this entire thing in real time, and the idea, when the Conservatives prorogued it, was to save their government. This is about really making sure that we have the tools.
The opposition accuses you of doing the same thing, right? Just as they got that criticism from your party, they're leveling that at you too.
But yeah, they are. But let's look at it. The Parliament was started, a couple of days after it was scheduled to come back. That we had absolutely no break during the entire pandemic process when we were delivering these supports and services to Canadians. That the people who were drafting the legislation, who were creating the plan to be able to meet this pandemic, didn't even have a breath. So the idea that we took a breath at the end of August leading into the beginning of September to be able to devise the plan to make sure there was support and services for Canadians, I think is essential and it's important. And I think that the reality now is that we have before us is a comprehensive set of support for Canadians. We're in a second wave. There are people struggling. And I think Canadians are demanding of us that we get the work done of putting those supports into place. I'm very happy that we have the support of the NDP on those supports. I think it's critically important that we work with the other parties and we continue to hear how we can ensure that folks are not falling through the cracks. This is what folks are worried about. No, I think the bill speaks for itself in terms of the supports that are needed for Canadians. We've been very clear that these are building upon the previous work that we've done. We see them as very much a logical extension of the work that we've been doing before, and that we're going to need to have some flexibility as a government as we try to deal with this second wave to make sure that we are nimble and can respond accordingly. So absolutely, we're open to continuing to work with members of the opposition and to hear ideas, but we are absolutely resolute about getting the support and services that Canadians need at this time. Okay, so Mr. Richards, you heard that the government is not open to splitting the bill. Does that mean that your party will vote against it?
So it's not the government's decision to make. This is a request we've made to the Speaker of the House of Commons to make a ruling under the standing orders of the House of Commons, and that ruling has not been forthcoming yet. We obviously will get that ruling prior to the vote. But at the end of the day, this is a government that has had the opportunity. They knew when these benefits were running out. They say they had to have a breath to make a plan. Well, part of that plan needed to include ensuring that it received proper accountability and ensuring that it received the proper study that it was due in the House of Commons, where the representatives of the Canadian people have a chance to look at it in full detail. And that opportunity has not been provided. And we've seen the mistakes this government has made before on some of their response mechanisms, and they've had to be fixed. So their plan should have included making sure that there was proper scrutiny in the House of Commons, that the people of Canada, through their representatives, had a chance to hold accountable for the things that they're bringing forward. And that has not happened, and that is irresponsible, and it's something that they deserve to be punished for.
Mr. Julian, final question to you. Are you supportive of the Conservatives' request to split the bill? Do you think Parliament should be more supportive of that?
Well, what we've been saying all along is we need to restore full parliamentary oversight. And as you know, over the course of the summer, we were pressing the other parties to put in place the hybrid parliament with the votes and all of the procedural protections that exist. And so any spending allocations that Liberals have is now in the framework of full parliamentary powers. That's quite different from last spring, and we're happy to have achieved that. Jagmeet Singh wanted to make sure that we had in place full parliamentary oversight, and we now do.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, all three of you, for making time for us tonight. Really appreciate it. Mark Holland is the Chief Government Whip, Blake Richards is the Conservative Whip, and Peter Julian is the NDP's House Leader.
Today, debate is being shut down again on another piece of legislation that could help Canadians, but probably will be very flawed. So why won't the Prime Minister let us do our job? Why won't the Prime Minister listen to Canadians and do a little consultation before ramming through these pieces of legislation?
We're in a second wave right now, Mr. Speaker. While the opposition is playing politics, we continue to focus on delivering for Canadians the help they need, because we'll have their backs.
Well, we could have debated this legislation for 6 weeks, but the back the Prime Minister had was his own when he shut down Parliament to cover up for the WE scandal. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lessons from the Prime Minister on playing political games.
That is an exchange from the House of Commons earlier today. Candice Bergen, the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau facing off about Bill C4. You heard us discuss it with MPs off the top of the show. That is the bill that essentially moves a number of Canadians, or provides the mechanism to move a number of Canadians who rely on the CERB over to different benefits because they don't qualify for EI. The majority of people who were on CERB as of last week moved over to EI, but there are about 1 million Canadians who require some help and don't. And so that's what this bill aims to do. I want to bring back the Power Panel to talk about the politics surrounding it. Jason Markisoff, Supriya Dwivedi, Shakira Chambers, and Françoise Boivin. I should provide the breaking news update that off the top of the show, the Conservatives were saying they had asked the Speaker to split the bill, the spending portion away from the benefits portion so that they could vote in support of the benefits portion. And the Speaker has ruled against that. So they will not split the bill, he said, because it was a continuation, not new, and all elements are COVID related. Supriya, I'll start with you on this subject because I think there's a few ways to look at it. First of all, I do understand the criticism that it's not like, time was running out 5 weeks ago. They knew this was coming. They could have introduced legislation should they not have prorogued Parliament. At the same time, the bill is really important, and the stuff that it does actually does really affect Canadians' lives. And those people who have lost their benefits right now, who can't access CERB, are in need of help. And if this bill doesn't go forward, even though there are those very valid political sort of conversations around it, people will be negatively impacted.
Yeah, and look, I think I would qualify this without trying to sound too glib, but it's basically like politicians playing politics, film at 11, right? I mean, I think both sides of this can spin this within their favor. I think from the Liberals' perspective, they really do want to sort of jam the Conservatives into a corner and be able to position them as being, so-called anti-spending with respect to this and say that they're, not taking the issue seriously enough. And of course, for the Conservatives, they can flip this around and make it seem like that the Liberals are being anti-democratic and not providing enough time to debate the issue. The whole notion of making this a confidence vote in and of itself is a little bit of political theater because we know the NDP is going to support it. And the other aspect is that if it were to be defeated, irrespective of it being a confidence vote or not, I mean, that would be a pretty big stain on the government to begin with, suggesting that they wouldn't have had the confidence of the House anyway. So all of this is political theater, for lack of a better way of describing it.
Shakira, do you think that's true?
It's pretty well. I think Supriya nailed it right on the head. I think ultimately, positioning this kind of, we have these benefit measures and we want to help Canadians, they're daring the Conservatives to kind of vote against this so they can kind of push their narrative, right? And we're seeing their narrative from the speech from the throne. They want to position themselves as this party that's going to build back better, and they want the Conservatives to be this group of austerity, and they want to kind of push that narrative forward to Canadians. So ultimately, I don't know how the Conservatives are going to vote, but I do think there is some credence to the fact that they want to separate that spending measure, right? I know it's related to COVID measures and the COVID measures in the bill, but ultimately what I see here is that they don't want to give the Liberals free rein, just spend billions of dollars without parliamentary scrutiny. And I think there is some truth to that. I actually think Canadians, when you look at some polling as far as how they view the economy and even how they view just spending moving forward, I think there is some truth to the Conservative position to actually have some scrutiny on the Liberal spending moving forward.
Françoise, what do you think about the way the NDP handled this? I had Mr. Julian on the show, and I was, it's interesting that it's essentially their support of the Liberals that allow this political theater, as Supriya and Shakir describe it, to actually happen. At the same time, their defense is, well, we were in this position, so we kind of did the best for Canadians that we could. How do you think it's being perceived?
I don't think it's sad for them, and I don't know who you want me to not be friends with no more. They might not like what I'm going to say. They'll never, in my book, get the credit for what they just did. They can say it the same way Supriya's talking about some type of theater between the Conservatives, the Liberals. A lot of people, a lot of observers, a lot of people who go into it deep down realize that you can rationalize this all you want. The bottom line is the NDP was not willing and ready to go into an election. I don't remove the fact that it is pretty good to help out Canadians, and that is important. It doesn't remove the fact that the 6 weeks missed to debate, and I'm still in awe that we will pass billions of dollars without even looking seriously into it, that
my ex-colleagues voted for a motion for closure. I tweeted about this afternoon, and I stand by my statement because I remember when I was on my feet from 2011 to 2015 with the same colleagues arguing that Harper's government trying to close down debates constantly with the help, with the Liberals saying exactly like us, that it was so anti-democratic and we owed it to our constituents to at least review the bill. I was looking at that bill, Vashi, today. It's not a simple bill. I mean, there's lots of articles. It has lots of incidents on many bills. Fiscal, the fiscal law, gives the mandate to CRA, the Income Tax Act, is not a simple. When you went to law school, that was one of the worst law you had to learn. And these people just like rubber stamp it, and it's going to be a comedy of voting tonight. So nobody is necessarily looking good. And if, except for the Liberals who will say, well, we're bringing this to the people, you're getting your money. They're not even crediting the NDP right now for helping out or anything. They're
crediting John Horgan,
which is
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
They're very quick to say this wasn't Jagmeet Singh. This was John Horgan who suggested
exactly. So they can boast all they want, and that's the play. They have to play it that way. Yeah. I understand that, but will it leave some? Yeah, I don't know.
To be fair, they did secure 2 changes in the legislation that will have, beyond, I think, a granular impact, especially when it comes to the higher amount for EI and the sick leave as well. Jason, I'll give the last word to you. If you just quickly comment on this, but then I also want you to tell us about Rob Anders, because we can't leave tonight without an update on that wild story.
Okay, so quickly on this, in terms of this one, I think that Trudeau reminded us that while they're doing so much innovation in parliamentary procedure, they should actually install next to the mace a nice big gong to be rung loudly every time a politician, like Trudeau says they're just playing politics the other side. Because come on. In terms of Rob Anders, he is the former MP Conservative who was elected as a kid in 1997, served through 2015, although after the Conservatives tried many, many times to get rid of him. He's a Calgary MP in a riding that is a potted plant could get elected, a deeply unpopular one. He finally only got out of politics when a conservative Ron Leipert beat him for the nomination. Now it turns out that this defender of the taxpayer has been charged with several years of tax evasion. Yeah. And I forget the exact term.
5 charges, various tax evasion offenses.
Yeah, and this may be drawing comparisons to what's befallen Donald Trump in the States, except for the big difference. In the States, Republicans will defend him no matter what. In Canada, Conservatives have a long, proud tradition of distancing themselves from the moronic and now apparently, potentially criminal things that Rob Anders has seemed to have done.
That is true. They are distancing themselves in this case, certainly. Okay, I have to leave it there. I'm out of time. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the discussion tonight. Thanks to our power panel, Jason Markisoff, Supriya Dwivedi, Shakir Chambers, and Françoise Boivin. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.